There's a reason so many people who grew up feeling out of place, awkward, insecure, not like the other girls, end up finding comfort in Ghibli's women. Animation has spent decades telling girls who they're meant to be: beautiful but passive, kind but powerless, strong but only in ways that look like masculinity. The industry has a long history of taking feminine coded traits, empathy, warmth, gentleness, and either demonizing them or treating them as flaws to overcome. Even when studios tried to modernize their heroines, the message often stayed the same. Empowerment meant shedding something soft. If that's the media you grew up with, you start internalizing it without realizing. You start distancing yourself from femininity because you think that's what strength really looks like. You learn to admire toughness and suppress vulnerability. And you don't notice how much that shapes you until a filmmaker like Hayao Miyazaki comes along and quietly rewires the entire framework. From Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind forward, Miyazaki writes women who refuse to fit the binary. Nausicaa is compassionate, nurturing, and gentle, yet she's also daring, decisive, and frighteningly competent. She gains strength through a version of femininity that animation had never taken seriously, and that was only the beginning. As Miyazaki's films evolved, his women also became even more layered: warriors, daughters, mechanics, witches, mothers, and anti-heroines. Characters who carry anger and compassion in the same breath. Characters who don't exist to be desired or saved or flattened into archetypes. Characters who are good, flawed, powerful, and vulnerable all at once. Instead of reinforcing the old stereotypes, Miyazaki blurs them. Instead of treating feminine traits as weaknesses, he treats them as the backbone of what makes someone capable of surviving a complicated world. You see it most clearly in characters like San and Lady Eboshi in Princess Mononoke. San's ferocity isn't framed as a loss of femininity. Eboshi's ruthlessness isn't framed as a masculine ambition. They both embody contradictions: nurturers and destroyers, protectors and aggressors, people who can be compassionate and dangerous at the same time. And Miyazaki doesn't force you to decide whether they're heroes or villains. He lets them be human. Then there's Chihiro, who might be the clearest statement of Miyazaki's philosophy. She isn't graceful, powerful, or confident. She's ordinary in every way the industry usually punishes. But she becomes extraordinary not by transforming into something idealized, but by learning how to face fear without losing herself. Miyazaki once said, "She triumphs, not because she destroys evil, but because she acquires the ability to survive." Her emotional intelligence becomes her strength. Her kindness becomes her power, and her vulnerability becomes the thing that allows her to navigate a world that should have swallowed her whole. And layered behind all of this is Miyazaki's personal history. Raised in a home where the only woman was his mother, a strong, sharp, deeply influential figure who shows up again and again across his work. Mothers in Ghibli aren't passive or symbolic. They're stabilizing forces, sources of wisdom, memory, and authority. They shape the emotional landscapes of his stories the same way they shaped his life. Taken together, all of this creates a completely different model of femininity. One that isn't shallow or performative or marketed as a brand. It's rooted in agency, moral complexity, and resilience. It's why so many viewers finally saw themselves in these characters. Miyazaki didn't sexualize them, flatten them, or turn them into icons. He let them be people. And what makes Miyazaki's approach so powerful is that he doesn't just hand his heroines strength. He lets them learn it in ways that feel attainable. A character like Kiki isn't facing some grand prophecy or cosmic destiny. She's a 13-year-old girl trying to survive her first bout of loneliness, burnout, and self-doubt. Her magic fading isn't a fantasy plot point, it's the emotional exhaustion every young person hits when they're trying to grow too fast. And instead of telling her to push harder or toughen up, the film shows her rebuilding herself through rest, connection, and honesty. Ursula and Osono don't save her, they guide her. Kiki's power returns when she stops trying to perform who she thinks she should be and starts accepting who she actually is. That's not just character growth, that's emotional literacy. Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle goes through a different kind of transformation. One that animation almost never allows female characters to experience. When Sophie becomes an old woman, she doesn't lose value. She gains clarity. Her age becomes a narrative device that frees her from the expectations placed on young women. beauty, desirability, self-consciousness. As she becomes physically older, she becomes emotionally bolder. Her assertiveness rises, her sense of self solidifies, and the film quietly argues something Western animation rarely touches. That confidence and agency often come when you're no longer performing for anyone else's gaze. Fio in Porco Rosso represents another side of Miyazaki's worldview. A girl navigating a male-dominated environment without shrinking herself or overcompensating. She earns respect not by imitating masculine traits, but by being skilled, creative, and unwaveringly herself. And just like San and Eboshi, she isn't idealized. She gets frustrated, she gets underestimated, but she still steps into spaces that weren't built for her and chooses to belong there anyway. Where Disney tried to update their princess archetype by turning passivity into athleticism and packaging empowerment as a product, Miyazaki did something far more grounded. He normalized a spectrum of womanhood. His characters don't exist to sell an aesthetic or prove a point. They exist to live, to fail, to change, and to try again. And they don't reject or resent men to do it. They don't posture against femininity. They simply embody their own agency in a world that doesn't simplify them. Even Miyazaki's so-called villains, Kushana, the Witch of the Waste, Yubaba, they're all written with layers that most films reserve only for tragic male antagonists. They're flawed, powerful, insecure, commanding. They carry both virtue and vice. They may act cruelly, but their motivations are never flat, and that complexity gives his worlds emotional depth. You're allowed to dislike their choices without being told to dismiss their humanity. And then there's San and Lady Eboshi, who together represent one of the most interesting dualities in animation. San is wild, emotional, fiercely loyal to her wolf family. Eboshi is strategic, ambitious, protective of her people even when her decisions cause harm. One defends nature, one champions industry. Neither is framed as the right woman. Neither is punished for being too soft or too hard. Miyazaki lets them exist in conflict without reducing them to moral symbols. That's what makes them feel real. Women who are both nurturing and dangerous, compassionate and contradictory, shaped by love but also shaped by wounds. And when you contrast all of this with the way young girls were taught to see heroines in mainstream Western animation, thin, passive, beautiful, compliant, it becomes obvious why Ghibli's women left such a mark. For the first time, girls weren't being sold a fantasy of femininity. They were being shown a possibility. And what ties all of Miyazaki's heroines together, across eras, ages, roles, or temperaments, isn't a shared archetype but a shared essence. They all have an inner life the narrative actually honors. Their fears matter, their instincts matter, their compassion matters, even their mistakes matter. They're not symbols of femininity, they're individuals whose identities aren't defined by how well they fit into a binary that never served them. It's why Miyazaki's films feel so liberating to people who'd only been shown two paths growing up: be delicate and admired, or be powerful and stripped of softness. Miyazaki refuses both. He treats feminine-coded traits as legitimate forms of strength, not sentimental accessories. He gives weight to qualities like intuition, patience, empathy, nurturance, and creativity. Not to romanticize them, but to show how they function in real-life conflict. Chihiro navigates a hostile spirit world, not through force, but through emotional intelligence. Kiki learns resilience not through rebellion, but through rest and self-understanding. Nausicaa saves lives because she's willing to understand something everyone else wants to destroy. And that's the quiet thesis running through all of Miyazaki's work. Femininity isn't a performance, and it isn't a limitation. It's a spectrum of human expression that deserves depth. His women can be gentle without fragility, fierce without cruelty, assertive without domination. They don't need to become men to be powerful or distance themselves from femininity to be respected. They grow into strength that looks like them. Even his maternal figures like Satsuki and Mei's mother, or Dola in Castle in the Sky, they guide, they stabilize, they challenge. And outside of Ghibli, motherhood in animation often defaults to symbolic warmth or tragic absence. Miyazaki instead writes mothers as formative influences. anchoring forces whose wisdom and resilience shapes entire worlds. And that's the secret to why his heroines resonate so widely. They're not marketed empowerment fantasies or glossy role models built for merchandising. They're people who are allowed to be insecure, frightened, stubborn, ambitious, nurturing, and brave. People whose femininity is never used against them. When Miyazaki said any woman is capable of being a hero as any man, he didn't just say it, he built worlds around it. He gave girls permission to see themselves as whole. In the end, Ghibli's women endure because they expand what femininity is allowed to look like. They don't ask young viewers to contort themselves into a mold. They show them how many forms strength can take. Whether it's Nausicaa standing between humanity and the Ohm with open arms, or San defending her forest with teeth bared, or Chihiro crying in fear before walking forward anyway. Miyazaki's heroines embody a simple truth that animation had ignored for decades. Femininity doesn't need to be rewritten to be powerful. It just needs to be recognized.